These are the top 5 submachine guns in the Stalker 2. So starting at number 5 is the Gangster. So this is a Mach 10 submachine gun, which is actually a sidearm. So you can't actually use this in one of your main slots. This actually goes in your slide arm slot, which is kind of awesome really, because a lot of people didn't notice that you could actually use this as your pistol slot. But yeah, the damage is pretty poor at 0.5. The penetration's not too bad though, it is 2.1, but it's got an insane rate of fire by 5. So the actual poor thing about this weapon is because of its insane rate of fire, you will probably miss a lot of shots. And yeah, its range is not the best at 0.7. And the actually it says is it's fairly midway, it's about decent, it's 2.1, but because of the insane rate of fire, this thing misses quite a lot of shots unless you're extremely close range. But yeah, the Gangster is a pretty unique variant. I will show this on the screen where to find this weapon. But yeah, it just holds 40 rounds in the magazine, so it does have a lot of ammo in the mag, but obviously you will go through the ammo quite quickly because of its insane rate of fire. But it's a pretty good weapon because of its sidearm. But the sad thing about this is it uses 45 caliber, so it's on the slight more expensive side compared to the other subs in this category. So yeah, you probably will have to pay a lot more for the ammo, which is a bit of a shame because it is a nice looking weapon. It's from like the 80s and 90s. It's like something you'd see in like fucking Rambo or something, but it is a pretty cool weapon. But yeah, the great thing about this is I'm probably rating it at number 5 is because it goes in the slide arm slot and it doesn't weigh that much. But yeah, full auto is the only mode you can use with this gun as well. So it is a bit of a shame, but it's fairly expensive just to buy the normal Mach 10 as well, about 12,000k. But yeah, with its magazine at 40 and its insane rate of fire, that's probably the only good thing about this. But because of its rate of fire is insanely high, you probably are going to miss quite a lot of rounds on the enemies in the game. At number 4, we have SAS Mate. So this is a unique variant of the MP5 or the Viper 5 that we call it in Stalker. Now this weapon isn't a bad weapon. Out of all these 5 weapons, this weapon isn't that awful. It's quite a decent weapon, and the great main thing about this weapon is it has 40 rounds in the mag, which is insane for a submachine gun. I know another weapon I will be showing in this list does have, and it does have an insane magazine count. But yeah, this does have a 1.3 damage, a 1.1 penetration, nearly a 5 rate of fire, 1.25 range, and a 3 accuracy. So this is probably the least of all the weapons for its damage and penetration stats, but its rate of fire is probably one of the highest, I'd say. But yeah, this weapon is a decent weapon overall, and with its insane magazine count, this thing actually shreds because you don't really need to reload it that much. But obviously with the rate of fire, you will go through ammo quite quick. This uses 9x19 caliber, so it's a cheaper round. I mean, most of the submachine guns in this game do have cheap rounds, so you aren't going to spend too much money on the rounds for the submachine guns in Stalker, so it's not too bad, and it doesn't weigh that much either, so it's pretty awesome. But yeah, this is a decent weapon if you find any enemy in the game, or exo enemies, or any mutant really. It's pretty decent against them, or any human enemies. The accuracy is not too bad in game, and it just feels quite nice to use if you are a fan of the MP5, which I am. This is a very good choice. I mean, out of the top 5 of these weapons, I mean, and it's a pretty easy one to get. You have to do a side quest called No Honor Among Thieves, so I've actually got a video on that on my channel. If you want to check that out, you can do. But yeah, it's quite an easy weapon to grab, and it's a decent mid-game weapon. But yeah, you can actually use this late game as well. It's not a terrible weapon. Like I said, out of these 5 weapons, none of these are really terrible. They're actually quite good to use in game. So, but with its insane rate of fire and its good damage and penetration stats, it's not too bad. But compared to the others, it doesn't really quite rank at the top of the list compared to the other submachine guns in the game. So that's SAS Mate, a pretty decent weapon. But out of the 5 weapons I'm showing, it's probably not the best out of the 5. That's just my personal opinion. So at number 3, the Integral A, which is pretty much just the Vector. Now this is a very good weapon. It's got insane fire rate and its penetration stats are like 2.9, so it is a pretty good weapon. And even I'd say this is probably at the top of the list as compared to the other subs. I don't think it quite ranks just above them. And to feel how it feels in game, I won't say it feels that great compared to the other submachine guns I'm going to show, but the weapon itself is pretty awesome and it's pretty good. But it's more of a late game weapon, so you will be getting this submachine gun later in the game, but you can actually find it in raw stock. So as long as you have enough money to buy this, you can. So its damage is about 0.7, which is pretty weak, but it makes up for that in penetration, which is 2.9, and its insane rate of fire by 5. Its range isn't the best, so I mean, it is a submachine gun, so the range on these things aren't the greatest, but it's actually pretty decent at 3.9. So you need 17,000k to actually buy this weapon, which is quite expensive, and it weighs slightly more than the SAS Mate, but I think it does perform better than SAS Mate. I know its magazine count is actually 20 rounds lower than SAS Mate, which is kind of a shame. And with its incredible fire rate, this will obviously go through rounds fairly quickly. So that's the only poor thing about this weapon. I don't think insane fire rate weapons are the greatest because you got to make sure you hit every single bullet, because you will go through rounds extremely quickly. and it does use 9x9 rounds, so it's a fairly cheap round as well. So most of these submachine gun rounds in the game are fairly cheap compared to like the ARs and the sniper rifles and the LMGs too. So this is a very good choice if you want this as a mid-game weapon. It is a good weapon, especially when you fully upgrade this thing and have the attachments for it. But yeah, the Integral A is a pretty good weapon. I know you can get like the Duck version called like the Rideman, which means on the stats page it's pretty much exactly the same. It just has a better skin where it's like a black and red skin, which is quite neat, expensive to buy as well, and it's more of a late game, mid-game weapon compared to the others where you can actually get them mid-game, other than one I'd say. But yeah, the Integral A is a good choice. So at number 2 we have the Spitter. Now to get this weapon you need to do the story quest called The Big Score. It's a side quest. You need to kill Sashko Cherry. You won't get off his body. I will have a video on my channel showing you how to get this weapon. But yeah, I'll show you a little screenshot of how to actually grab this weapon and what side quest it is. But yeah, it's a pretty good submachine gun to grab. And when you fully upgrade this thing, the magazine goes to about 31 rounds. Its stats are pretty decent as well at like 1.2 damage, so it's slightly better than the Vector of the damage stats. Penetration is 8 points behind the Vector at 2.1, but it makes up for it in the damage stats. Its rate of fire is pretty cool as well. It's at 4.95. Got decent range and decent accuracy. Now in game this weapon is pretty good, and when you actually find pretty much any enemy types other than those stupid pseudo giants, this thing is pretty good. When you fully upgrade it with a laser sight, it does actually take down enemies fairly swiftly, and it does have its own suppressor on it, which is pretty cool as well. And you can get this about mid game. Just before mid game you can do this side quest. Just make sure you kill the guy to grab it. Now this is one of my personal favorites, so a lot of people sleep on this weapon, but it's actually very good. So yeah, you need to check this out, and it's pretty lightweight as well, and it does use the cheaper rounds, 19-18 rounds, so make sure you grab this weapon. And yeah, you can change it into single and full auto mode. A lot of people sleep on this, but it is actually quite a good submachine gun to grab. You do the side quest, that's how you grab it. So I'm rating this at number 2, and this is one of my personal favorites in the game, but it doesn't quite top the rank of the list because I've got another one that's absolutely amazing. But yeah, the Spitter is the unique variant of the bucket, and its color is slightly different. It's not more of a red color, but more of an orange color on the grip. So finally we have number 1. This is the Rat Killer. So this is a unique variant of the Sub-Zero. So you will get this probably late game. It is actually connected to a main story quest called An Act of Mercy. So I've got a video on this on my channel. I'll show you a little video of where to grab it. But through the main story, you will find this. It's kind of hidden at one of the back rooms. Now its stats are about a 1.2 for damage, 2.8 for penetration, which is pretty good. Its rate of fire is at 4.9, range is 1.3, and its accuracy is 4.4, which is pretty insane. And when you fully upgrade this thing, you can imagine this flies right off the scale. So yeah, and the good thing about this is it does have its own little cool skin, which is like a white camo, and it has 50 rounds in the magazine, which is insane. And yeah, this thing is an absolute beast against pretty much any enemy type. You run this alongside an assault rifle or shotgun at close quarters, this thing absolutely shreds. And because of its insane magazine count, like you can just absolutely smash up enemies because you don't really need to reload that often. And its ammo is fairly cheap, and it's a 19-18 round, so you can get these ammo quite cheap in the game. So like I said, you will have to do the main story, so it's quite a late game weapon. But you could also get the non-nuke variant, which you can get from Yanev Station or Rostock as well. So when you full upgrade this thing, it's an absolute beast. So the stats are pretty good compared to the other submachine guns. They're slightly higher. Now the penetration stats on the Vector more 0.1 point higher, but its damage is actually lower. Its rate of fire is pretty much exactly the same, but the accuracy on this is actually 10 times better than the Vector. But the Vector you can actually grab earlier on, which is the shame. Compared to this weapon, you have to get late game, but you can get the non-nuke variant pretty much at the same time as you can grab the Vector. And I don't think many enemies drop the Sub-Zero, so you have to pretty much buy it from one of the stations, probably Yanev Station. But I do have a video on how to grab this weapon. Make sure you check that out. But this weapon absolutely shreds, and because of its insane magazine count, probably the best submachine gun in the game because of that, and its incredible accuracy. So that is my top 5 submachine guns in the game. There's not actually really many to go through in this game, but it's mainly, you got different variants like the unique variants and the non-ones. But there's obviously other variants of the submachine guns like the Viper 5, the normal version, which is pretty poor. I mean, it's a very early on game weapon you will grab, but the unique variant's slightly better. Make sure to comment down below what your top favourite submachine guns are in Stalker 2, because obviously we'll probably all have different opinions on which ones are the best ones, but I'd say these are my favourite top 5. Tell me down below which are your favourite submachine guns in Stalker 2.